But there was a new study that came out that showed that 110 out of 111 brains that were donated by former NFL players showed signs of CTE and a lot of concussions. And the question is football too physical? What can they do?
Yes, I think that it is a little too physical, and I think that it's motivated by fans. I think fans a lot of times motivate how the game is played, and fans like big hits. Fans like, those like touchdowns and big hits. That's what they enjoy. That's what people want to see. And so for those big hits, 75% of the time, the players that are getting hit don't get back up. I mean, they're getting hurt much more often. Players are getting hurt much more often. And so I think that's something that the NFL Rules Committee needs to go over. And I think that they need to adopt the rugby tackling rule, which the rugby tackling rule, from what some people don't know, is you have to come into a tackle with your arms ready to wrap up. You cannot come into a tackle with your arms tucked into your chest. You cannot. That is completely illegal, and you will, in rugby, you'd get put in the sin bin, which is basically a penalty box. But, you get flagged. And so if you're not going to wrap up a player, if you have your arms out, it's a lot harder to come in and lay out a big hit because, you can't dive. You can't really force a lot of momentum with your, driving your arms through your chest. And so if
especially where you can't lead with your helmet.
Yeah, exactly. And so if the NFL adopted the rule, the rugby tackling rule, I think it'll eliminate a lot of those head-to-head hits. It'll eliminate a lot of those huge forceful hits that don't go penalized because they aren't really against the rules, but that need to be against the rules. And so it's, there's a couple things, but I read a lot about that study, and I read the, final paperwork on it. And of those 111 brains that were donated, I think 88% of the brains were donated by either defensive or offensive linemen. So the stats are a little skewed because linemen are big. They take big hits because they're having to block and do things like that. So it is a little skewed, but it should be the same thing. I mean, you have to think about those players. You have to think about the players that are, in the trenches doing those things, the linemen that, really aren't. I mean, I bet you a majority of the players couldn't name the starting 5 linemen for the Patriots, the most popular team in the NFL. I couldn't name a single lineman on the Patriots team right now. So,
I could name their positions, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But it's those players are the ones that are getting hurt, but no one realizes it. It's when the star players get hurt, and that's another thing that the NFL needs to take more into account is, how to decrease injuries in linemen, because no one talks about it, no one worries about it, and so it's those players need to be thought of instead of just when a star player, like when Antonio Brown got hit a couple of years ago in the playoffs to force him out of the game, and instead of when the Steelers lost 2 offensive linemen earlier in the season because of head hits, because of concussions. And so those are the things the NFL needs to take more seriously, and they need to deal with more seriously than they do now.
Right. And I think, I heard somewhere, I don't remember if it was The Herd with Colin Cowherd or Undisputed with Skip and Shannon, that they mentioned that these brains were probably a little bit older players, that football has changed. The equipment and the rules are more geared for player safety now. I do think that there is room for improvement. We can always be better at protecting players, but at the same time, some of these most of them were probably older players, and we have already taken steps. So only time will tell if the steps that we've taken are enough or if we need to keep going.